The Club World Cup begins this weekend. Me personally, I'm interested to see how all of these teams match up from around the world. Player welfare, not good. They didn't need this tournament, and players will go through a meat grinder, as I've said numerous times. But if I, close my eyes to that, which we shouldn't do, but if I did, then I'm super interested in this. Also, referees will be wearing body cams, and we'll get to see through that and hear their live reviews. Hell yeah. Anyway, like it or not, it's happening, and I'll be watching. And I say like it or not because as someone who has a pretty broad audience, a very international audience, it's been interesting to see the reactions to this tournament. Many people from Europe don't like this tournament, but the world is bigger than Europe, right? And many from outside of that continent are into it. Not all, but many. Despite it disrupting the seasons in some cases, they're excited to see how their teams match up against the European sides. South American sides looking forward to taking on Mexican or American teams again. Things that perhaps the European fan doesn't take into account. African teams getting to play against European sides, which they don't often get to. But I can tell you, the European clubs are taking it seriously. We'll get into why in a moment as we go through all of the groups, give you a quick rundown of how and why they got here, because it is pretty confusing in some cases, and a few notes on each team. This will be a challenge for myself to be concise and not try to say everything possible for each club. But hey, in another video this week, I will predict the entirety of the tournament, all of it. So stay tuned for that. A lot of these teams will be facing each other for the first time. Well, some will be reuniting, and speaking of reuniting, they're back. With a new tournament comes the return of our friends OneFootball back on the Rabona TV program, and OneFootball will be your go-to app for following everything Club World Cup this summer. The best place to follow it all. So here's what you've got to do, guys. Use the link in the description or just scan the QR code that you can see on the screen now to download the OneFootball app for free. Customize some selections to your liking, teams, players, competitions to follow, and make sure you follow the Club World Cup, just like over 1 million other users have. Once you do that, your customized homepage will deliver all of the by-the-minute breaking news on the things you care about in the football world. And when you head into the Club World Cup section of the app, you're all set. The schedule's at your fingertips, group tables, top news stories, player stats, and more. Because all of this is on top of the other features from OneFootball, such as the latest transfer news, or hey, you can even follow the Gold Cup closely as well. That's happening this summer. So guys, use the link in the description or scan the QR code to download OneFootball and keep yourself updated with the constantly changing world of football. Thanks to OneFootball for sponsoring this video. Now, before we get to the groups, let's talk about what has been a game changer and has caused sides like, Juve, Bayern, Man City, and Real Madrid to really take this thing seriously now. Now, I bring these teams up as examples because these are the teams that everyone is saying won't bring their best players and won't care about the tournament at all, but that truly isn't the case anymore. They're bringing the big guns, unless, they're taking the opportunity to get a surgery done or something like that. You have someone like Thomas Muller speaking about things from a competitive level and the novelty of this tournament, as he said, quote, "It would be incredible to play against Boca Juniors in the Club World Cup. As a fan, I know a lot about Argentine football from the TV and the internet. The match against Boca Juniors in Miami will certainly be a highlight. As a European footballer, you don't usually get to play against such traditional clubs." But from the financial side of things, European clubs are wanting to win it, and that's why they're bringing their top players along now. So European clubs get between 12.8 and 38.2 million in US dollars just for showing up. The South American clubs get 15.2 million each, Auckland City get 3.5, and the rest of the clubs get 9.5. So the clubs from CONCACAF, Africa, and Asia. And the more you win in this tournament, the more money you get. In the group stage, you get $2 million USD per win, $1 million per draw. You get $7.5 million for making the round of 16, $13.1 for making the quarterfinals, $21 for the semis, $30 million for making the final and finishing as runner-up, and $40 million for winning the tournament. So the total earnings, depending on what you got for a participation prize, could be around $90 million. That's a big money prize for European clubs. That's a big signing, for example, and that's absolutely transformational money for any club outside of Europe as well. That's why you see Florentino Perez wants to win it, why Man City players are saying they want to win this inaugural edition. I've spoken to people who have close ties to Bayern and they really want to win this thing. PSG, they don't need the money, but you know that they want to be the inaugural winners to cap off this insane season that they've had already. this quadruple winning season. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get to the groups. Given it's the first edition of this tournament, it does make for some difficult decisions regarding who was in and who was out, right? So some of the teams showing up here are champions from a year, 2, 3, or 4 years ago, and others are just top ranked. So also another thing with the nature of this competition being in the summer, teams typically have their preseason tours decided upon a year in advance at times. So it's not like you could wait for the winner of a continental competition for this May or June and then have them show up to the Club World Cup a couple of weeks later. It's a logistical nightmare. Having given them some slack, some of their choices are super weird still, with a certain team getting a loophole invite, if you will. One of the teams that's seen as probably the biggest weird inclusion actually is in Group A, which is made up of Al Ahly, the marketing inclusion of Inter Miami as hosts, FC Porto, and Palmeiras. Now, MLS watchers know that the Supporter Shield, aka the trophy given for the team that finishes top of MLS regular season, is a nice achievement, but that achievement is undermined by the MLS Cup, the main trophy that teams want to win. Plus, you want continental champions coming to this tournament. Inter Miami are not that. They did win the Supporters Shield. They did not win the MLS Cup. They didn't make the final. In fact, they were out in the first round of the MLS Cup playoffs, and they did not win the CONCACAF Champions League this season either. But Messi is a gigantic name. Messi brings numbers, and so Inter Miami are included and will be playing the first match of the tournament on June 14th in Miami against African football royalty, really, Al Ahly. Now, Inter Miami looked great during last season, and they have indeed improved a lot after a horrible run of form. 1 win, 5 losses, 1 draw in a 7-match spread. They did get 2 wins in a row, but it must be said against a horrible Montreal team, the team I support in MLS, and a Columbus side that hasn't won a game in over a month. 6 matches winless. So Messi and friends are obviously a good attacking side. Messi still has quality despite not being as mobile as he once was. He can still pull a crazy finish, a crazy pass out. Suarez, he struggles to move now, but that finishing quality is still there also. Jordi Alba is still very good actually, but their defense will be picked apart by strong opposition. And they do have some stronger opposition in here. Not the strongest in the tournament, but stronger for sure. FC Porto qualified for this tournament as the 5th best ranked team in the UEFA 4-year ranking due to their Champions League performance, but they haven't been at their best for a couple of seasons. Major changes behind the scenes as their former president, Nuno Pinto da Costa, lost the election to André Villas-Boas. That coming after Nuno had been in charge since the 80s. They also split from Sergio Conceição, and things didn't go swimmingly last season, but there are signs of improvement under Martin and Salmi. Plus, here's someone to look out for from FC Porto, Rodrigo Moura, the 18-year-old magician who could absolutely be top of the class amongst his generation of Portuguese footballers. Emphasis on ballers. He typically plays as an attacking midfielder, incredibly intelligent, great at escaping his opponents with the ball when he's surrounded and beating players on the dribble. He showed this season he has a great accurate strike and can slide passes through tight spaces as well, incredibly accurately. Also, watch out for Samu, the 21-year-old Spanish striker, 25 goals and 3 assists, physically dominant, incredibly fast, but also very technically gifted. So Porto could grow into this tournament. Plus, they have Diogo Costa at the back, a very good keeper. Porto will be a difficult side in this group. Now, speaking of young stars, let's look at Palmeiras, who are coached by a Portuguese fella, Abel Ferreira. Ferreira coached Palmeiras through a period of dominance in Brazil and at the continental level as well, winning the Copa Libertadores 2 years in a row in 2020 and 2021, winning the Serie A in 22 and 23, and producing tons of talent. Endrick, one of the biggest names, but the current massive talent, Estevão, who only turned 18 in April of this year. Young. Estevão will get to use this tournament as a way to sort of announce himself on the global stage before heading off to Chelsea. At least to those who don't follow South American football, he's announcing himself to them. Domestically, things haven't been as strong as former years for Palmeiras, but Estevão and his squad mates are showing up in the Copa Libertadores again. 6 wins from 6 in the group stage. Estevão with 4 goals and an assist in that tournament. Given they have a Portuguese manager in Ferreira who knows how to play tournament ball, and while Palmeiras don't exactly play with free-flowing flair or jogo bonito, Ferreira's been proven to be effective in these kinds of setups, these kinds of tournaments, so they're going to be strong as well in this group. And finally, Like I said before, African footballing royalty at Al Ahly, the most successful club in African football history. They've won the league 3 seasons in a row in Egypt. They won the African Champions League in 2020, 21, 23, 24. They've had iconic African managers at the helm, such as Pitso Mosimane and then Marcel Koller. Not African. He took over and won even more than Pitso did. And now Jose Rivero has taken over as of May. Al Ahly held on to win this past season. They have a culture of winning, and the top African players are drawn to this team. If you have ambitions of conquering African football, then this is one of the teams you go to. Absolutely. In fact, they failed to make this year's Champions League final thanks to a 90th minute own goal in the second leg, making that match 1-1. So Mamelodi Sundowns advanced to the final on away goals. That's rough. A player to watch out for, Imam Ashur, midfield baller, went on a run of 7 matches to close out the season where he had a goal contribution in each, at least 4 assists and 4 goals, helping Al Ahly see off Pyramids in the league once again. So this should be a well-contested group. Group B may not be as hotly contested, but at these international tournaments, you never know what can happen. You have the current Champions League winners, PSG, you have Atletico Madrid, you have Botafogo, the Copa Libertadores winners, and Seattle Sounders, who qualified based on winning the 2022 CONCACAF Champions League, the only MLS team to do so, now called the Champions Cup. They actually deserve to be at this tournament, you know? Now, Seattle will get to play all 3 of their matches at home at Lumen Field, and the Sounders have one of the most dedicated fan bases in the league, so maybe that will propel them forward, but they'll be in a tough group. Granted, Botafogo has fallen off a bit. We'll get to them, so maybe Seattle can get a result there. They'll be without one of their better players in Paul Arriola, but this is still a pretty talented squad by MLS standards, and Seattle's issues seem to be more down to coaching than anything else. They often look like they aren't on the same page in the final third, and they struggle in the attack for the most part. They have real difficulty in breaking down teams, and their defense isn't at a place where I think that they can bunker, where they can hold off attacks of the teams around them. They recently protested their cut of the Club World Cup money. They're going to get more now. And then followed that up with a 3-0 drubbing against the Vancouver side that was missing some of their top players. So I think it will be a tough tournament for the Sounders. Botafogo, they looked so good after winning the Copa Libertadores. Another John Cowboy Texter team alongside the likes of Lyon and Crystal Palace. But after winning the Copa Libertadores, things aren't going swimmingly this season for Botafogo. To be fair, they surged from the second division to Copa Libertadores champions, so their progress has been pretty unbelievable, right? It's still early in the season, but they sit in 6th at the moment. Lots of time for change there. And in the Libertadores, they have indeed advanced to the round of 16. As for notable players, they have, Alex Telles. I'm sure you remember him from Porto and Man United. They actually just signed Arthur Cabral from my club, Benfica. Weird player. He had moments where the guy looked like R9, and other moments where he looked like he was a volleyball player or something, trying to play football. Speaking of, they also have a Portuguese manager in Renato Paiva, who was part of Benfica for a long time. Never crossed paths with Cabral, however. It's really hard to see past either Atletico Madrid or PSG at this moment, and for obvious reasons, right? Atletico Madrid have a very good squad, and PSG's is even better. Oh, and they're the European champions, with nobody really looking close to them in the knockout rounds. A scare from Aston Villa, but beyond that, they were chilling and set a record for the greatest deficit in a Champions League / European Cup final. PSG will likely be without Ousmane Dembele for the group stage as he got injured on international duty, but they have enough quality that they will still not just be a favorite to top the group, but win the entire tournament. That's Enrique's stated objective. PSG made it in as the second best team in the 4-year rankings of the Champions League, but as the recent winners, deserve to be there even more so, right? You know everything about PSG at this point. Atletico, they also made it due to their UEFA ranking, as they have performed better than Barcelona in the Champions League in the last 4 years, so their coefficient ranking is actually higher. And remember, you can only have 2 teams per country at this tournament. That will come into play regarding RB Salzburg, but that's for later in this video. Simeone stated the same as Enrique. Atleti are coming to this tournament to win it. And while they had a crushing March of 2025 where they went off the rails completely, Alvarez has returned. Sorloth is in great form. They'll be strong in the knockout rounds of this tournament should they make it there, which it's looking likely they will. Damn, like I said, it's going to be difficult for me to be succinct. These avenues that my brain takes me down, but okay, focus up. Group C, Bayern Munich, Auckland City FC, Boca Juniors, and SL Benfica. Again, you probably don't need a run through on Bayern and Benfica. Benfica will have Angel Di Maria, which is cool. Despite him joining Rosario Central soon, Benfica fell short in both the league and the Taça de Portugal at the end of the season, the more desirable of the two cups, the Taça de Portugal. Overall, I expect us to go through, as we haven't been terrible this past season, but we haven't been clutch either. Though it will be a good fight, a cool fight to see also against Boca Juniors. More on them in a second. Bayern Munich should be one of the top teams at this tournament, which, as I said, they are taking seriously, and they got in as the top ranked UEFA side, given they only ranked the non-winners in the last few years, right? So Bayern's performance in the Champions League has them as the top-ranked side. They will even have their new signings, Jonathan Tah and Tom Bischoff, for the tournament, and it looks like Jamal Musiala will be fully fit and is looking forward to playing in this thing. Bayern's squad is strong, and if not for some better luck and some better set-piece defending, they could have made the Champions League semifinals. They weren't always convincing, but they have one of the best squads at this entire tournament, as well as one of the best strikers in the world in Harry Kane, right? Auckland City FC, the lone representative of Oceania. They have won the Oceania Champions League 4 years in a row. Previously, they won it every year from 2010 to 2017. So they are the kings of Oceania, kings of the Pacific. There was just no other option, right? You want the Continental Cup holders? It's them. You want the best team of the last 4 years? It's them. They are dominant. Oh, and not to be confused with the A-League side, Auckland FC. This is Auckland City FC. Auckland FC, though, doing well in the A-League. And finally, you have Boca Juniors, who had a bit of a rough spell in the last few years, but are seemingly turning things around at this time. They were flying back in 2022, but since then finished in 7th in 23, after going through a million managers, 6th in 24, as well as a few more managers. And while I said they have been better recently, they did recently also lose the quarterfinals of the Apertura to Independiente. Now, Captain Cavani is looking like he'll be available after he was out with an injury in May. He's the biggest name at the moment, or at least probably the most recognizable for people. But the goals lately, as in the last few years, have been coming from Miguel Merentiel, Cavani also, but mostly Merentiel, and someone to watch out for, Milton Delgado, a great 19-year-old deep-lying playmaker, a great passer, and certainly a talent for the future. Apparently, Inter Milan are interested in signing him, so looking forward to Boca Juniors. It's going to be fun. Like Thomas Muller was saying, it's going to be fun seeing the European teams up against them. In Group D, we have Flamengo, Espérance de Tunisie, and Chelsea and LAFC. Let's start with LAFC, who got in here very, very late. So basically, with Club Leon and Pachuca, both Mexican clubs being owned by the same ownership group, that breaks FIFA's regulations on multi-club ownership for this. Now, Pachuca won the CONCACAF Champions League in 24, so they made it through to the Club World Cup, but Club Leon won it back in 23. So the precedent was given to the most recent winner, and Leon was kicked out. That meant that there was one spot remaining in the tournament, and FIFA decided to have a playoff there between Club America, the top-ranked team in CONCACAF rankings, and LAFC, whom Leon had defeated in the 2023 final, which is interesting. So, LAFC played against Club America in Los Angeles, in their home stadium. Lucky them. They went behind 1-0, but tied the game in the 89th minute to earn extra time, where LAFC's Dennis Bouanga scored after 24 minutes of extra time to send LAFC to the Club World Cup. They had a poor start to their MLS season, but they have really turned things around as they're currently unbeaten in 9 matches. Bouanga is someone to watch out for. Very dangerous attacker. Obviously, seeing Olivier Giroud there is interesting. Hugo Lloris also. So, LAFC, not high expectations. Espérance Sportive de Tunis, the top-ranked non-winning qualifier from the African Confederation. Basically, the Olympiacos of Tunisia with how dominant they are. They have 34 titles in Tunisia and have won the CAF Champions League 4 times as well in their history, even going back-to-back in 2018 and 19. However, they also lost the 2024 final and are always there or thereabouts, right? Absolutely a top team in Africa. Incredibly, they never lost a game by more than 1 goal this entire season, including in the CAF Champions League. Considering they only lost twice domestically and won every game in the domestic cup, they are definitely the giants of their respective league and have seen that success carry onto the continent as well. Now, I won't claim to know a lot about them, but one thing I did notice in my research, I'm looking forward to seeing what Ashraf Jabri can do. 23-year-old center forward. He has the best minutes per goal ratio on the team, but they also have the Algerian OG himself, Youssef Belaili, 33-year-old who had 34 goal contributions in 34 matches this season. Maybe a few years ago, I would say they could be a dark horse to make it out of the group, but I don't know about that because the next team is very strong. Flamengo! They have quite a good team, don't they? They qualify as the winners of the 2022 Copa Libertadores. Remember that final up against Atletico Paranaense? The recently sacked Dorival Jr. leading them to continental glory. Recently sacked from the Brazilian national team, that is. But this season they are actually coached by one of their former players, and certainly Europeans will recognize them, good old Felipe Luis. Felipe Luis of Atletico Madrid, Chelsea, and of course Flamengo fame. He worked his way up to the senior manager position rapidly, man. He was the manager of their U17 squad in January of 2024. He was excellent for them. Then jumped up to the U20 squad in June of 24. And by September of 24, he was managing the senior team. He helped them to the Copa do Brasil, Supercopa do Brasil, and the Campeonato Carioca as well. They have a very strong squad with Brazilian internationals such as Gerson, the midfielder who spent a few years in Italy with Fiorentina and AS Roma, and played with Marseille as well. Or how about their striker, Pedro, who scored 30 goals in 43 appearances last season? Wesley, the 21-year-old fullback who was capped by Brazil back in March. Unfortunate time. He played the full 90 minutes in that 4-1 drubbing from Argentina. And what about Jorginho, Danilo, Alexandro, or the legend Arrascaeta? But anyway, Flamengo are a top side, the leaders in Brazil at the time of recording this, and are absolutely the team that can cause some issues with their great balance of potent attack and strong defense. And finally, Chelsea, they qualify as the 2021 Champions League winners. In fact, since each country can only have 2 representatives and England had 2 winners in the past 4 years, that's the reason why Liverpool haven't qualified despite ranking high in the UEFA rankings. Precedent goes to the 2 teams that won the thing, right? But anyway, Chelsea finished their Premier League season strong and ended up qualifying for the Champions League, which was apparently more than the ownership had expected of Enzo Maresca this season. There were times where Chelsea looked great. There were times where Chelsea looked completely limp. Overall, I think that's just sort of the nature of having such a young squad without many mature, experienced heads in there. But when it comes to, a pure talent point of view, Chelsea is very strong, and in my opinion have gotten stronger with the signing of Liam Delap. I like Nico Jackson in everything but his finishing. I think as a forward, not a striker, but a forward, he offers far more than just goals, which he doesn't offer very often, let's be honest. He went a few months without a goal, right? But as far as work rate, passing, etc., I like Nico Jackson. Anyway, I think Chelsea should be a lock to finish top of the group, but they are also a difficult team to trust with their freaky form at times. But with the likes of Cole Palmer finding his form, speaking of form, at the end of this season here, helping in that Conference League final comeback, they are surely going to make it through, right? They should top this group, but I'm excited to see Flamengo as well. Hell, excited to see all the Brazilian clubs who should be very well supported at this tournament, by the way. Tons of Brazilian expats in the US. And here we go. When I think of the Club World Cup, I think of a group like this, Inter Milan, Monterrey, River Plate, and Urawa Red Diamonds. Because when I think of the original Club World Cup and how it was this mysterious tournament that went on in the middle of the night where I lived, and I never saw a single match live, but it made me think of teams like Urawa Red Diamonds or just Urawa Reds and Kashima Antlers, and how that would prompt me to go into the rest of the world section of FIFA team selection, where I'd then stumble upon teams like Kaiser Chiefs as well. Good times. Slowly learning about the football world with EA Sports opening up some pathways to research. Anyway, Urawa Red Diamonds in here as the 2022 winners of the AFC Champions League as they defeated Al Hilal 2-1 on aggregate in that final. By the way, this was Al Hilal before the big Saudi Pro League revolution, right? A year before they stormed the European leagues for talent. Now, despite winning the Champions League that season, Urawa Reds have been a bit all over the place domestically as they finished in 9th in that season that they won the thing, 4th and trophyless in the next season, maidenless, and 13th last season. Things are looking better this season. They've made a few signings in January, such as Matteo Savio, and he's helped with their attack greatly, but that's still an area where they really have struggled. Their top scorer is a guy who previously played mostly as a left back or defensive midfielder in the previous season, Ryoma Watanabe. He's in more advanced positions now, as he has been throughout his career, but it speaks to their big issue, as their Swiss Army knife, is their most potent finisher. Inter Milan, they qualify as the top-ranked UEFA side for their performance in the Champions League, despite losing the Champions League final in embarrassing fashion and losing their head coach to fellow Club World Cup participant Al Hilal, and they now have former player Christian Kivu as their head coach. Kivu has 13 senior matches under his belt as a manager, and while things looked very promising at Parma and he stopped the bleeding and showed he has decent game management, it's a big gamble for a club as big as Inter. One thing he needs to sort out is their defense, as Inter have been very leaky this past season by their own standards. For a team that was so good defensively prior, they have been nothing close to that. No teams in this group have the attack to match PSG, so Inter should still top this group in spite of everything, but a team like River Plate could cause some issues. In fact, the battle for second will be fun. Where Boca have struggled the last couple of years, River haven't exactly been flying, but did win the Primera back in 2023. They qualify for this tournament as the top-ranked team in CONMEBOL rankings that hasn't won the Libertadores in the past 4 years. Whew. Now, everyone will be watching River Plate's 17-year-old sensation, Franco Mastantuano, who holds the title as the oldest-looking 17-year-old I've ever seen in my life, and less notably, joined Real Madrid. El Mas Grande spent a huge amount recently, about 50 million euros, which is a lot for our Argentinian side. They did make a lot of sales, though, in order to give Marcelo Gallardo essentially a new team. Gonzalo Montiel came back, as did Petzala, Cuarta, and Driussi. Gallardo is, of course, a great coach, and for me, River is the second strongest team in this group. And finally, we have Monterrey, who are expected to fight it out with River Plate for second place. Always cool seeing Mexican teams up against, South American teams, as they stopped playing in the Copa Libertadores back in 2016, so we don't see it as often anymore. Now, Monterrey got into this tournament as the winners of the 2021 CONCACAF Champions League, and the club has recently made a push to sign some big-name talent that fans of European football will recognize. Sergio Ramos, of course, being the biggest name, despite playing only a handful of matches due to injury, again. But they also have Sergio Canales, Oliver Torres, Lucas Ocampos, and Jesus Corona. They really have a good relationship with Sevilla. But it's difficult to get a read on how they play, as they have had 4 different coaches since 2023. But the current coach, Dominic Torrent, will lean on Canales to dictate play and feed Fimbres, their 20-year-old star, down the left. But they face Inter and River Plate in their first 2 matches, and with how things have been going lately, such as losing to Toluca, who are down to 9 men by the 32nd minute, I don't know about Monterrey, man. Group F. Hell yes, another Club World Cup-ish group with Fluminense representing South America, Borussia Dortmund representing Europe, Ulsan HD representing Asia, and Mamelodi Sundowns representing Africa, a team I'm really excited to watch. Beautiful stuff. We'll start with Borussia Dortmund, who qualify as one of the top-ranked UEFA sides based on their Champions League performances in the past few years. They had a mostly forgettable season recently, starting things out with former player Nuri Sahin as their coach, which was an abject failure, let's be real, leaving them in 11th in the Bundesliga for some time. I mean, as of the 26th match day, they were in 11th. Then Niko Kovac came in, a guy who didn't excite me, I'll be honest, but he absolutely sorted out their defense and got them winning matches again, so credit to him. They're also scoring a ton under him. They ultimately landed in 4th place after winning 7 and drawing 1 of their final 8 Bundesliga matches, and qualified for the Champions League again, which was very important for the club's financials. If this tournament was 6 months ago, I'd say that there was a chance that Borussia Dortmund could have been one of the big disappointments and potentially get grouped or something, but with the massive improvements under Kovac, they'll get out of this group. I'm fairly certain. Also, Joe Bellingham signs for them. The Dortmund-Bellingham connection is back on. Fluminense qualify as the 2023 Copa Libertadores winners, where they were absolutely balling out under their former coach Fernando Diniz. His style of play, how he was a leader in the relationism tactics at the time, got a lot of attention, so much that he was coaching the Brazilian national team and Fluminense at the same time. But the following season was a bust. Diniz was sacked and Mano Menezes took over. They've since exchanged Menezes for Renato Gaúcho. This is his 6th time coaching Fluminense. The Brazilian coaching carousel is unmatched. Unmatched. Fluminense are one of Brazil's most successful clubs, and they have seen 40-year-old Thiago Silva rejoin them a year ago. Previously, Marcelo did as well, but he left and retired after some disagreements with the club. They're seen as the second favorite in this group as things have improved under Gaúcho, and they are just 4 points off the top in Brazil. However, do not sleep on the Sundowns. Yes, Mamelodi Sundowns have been absolutely dominant in South African football. They're called the Brazilians due to their jerseys. They have won the league every year since 2018, 8 years running. They also made the CAF Champions League final this year, but lost to Egyptian side Pyramids. Just Pyramids. 3-2 on aggregate. In fact, they defeated 2 other Club World Cup participants on their way to the final, Al Ahly and Espérance de Tunis. I've said their name different every time. Anyway, during the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations, South Africa got 3rd place. And the entire team was almost made up of Sundowns players. There were 10 players from Mamelodi Sundowns, including some star attackers. In fact, the attack of the Sundowns is what you need to watch out for, as the first, second, and third best scorers in the South African Premiership this season all came from Mamelodi Sundowns. Lucas Ribeiro Costa, Ikram Reyners, and Arthur Salles. Salles and Ribeiro make up a Brazilian duo in the attack. Salles looks quite good from what I've seen, by the way, a good young Brazilian, with the South African Reyners joining them as well. He's very good. Solid team with a good keeper in Williams. And finally, we have Ulsan HD, the Korean representatives, who are the top-ranked non-winner of the AFC Champions League, but they did win it back in 2020. They won the K-League in 22, 23, and 24, but this season, after 19 matches, they sit in 3rd. On top of that, they also lost 6 of their 7 AFC Champions League group stage matches, so things are not looking great for Ulsan at this tournament, especially when you throw in how they have competed at the Club World Cup before, the old format, twice before, and haven't won a single game. So we wish them well, of course. Maybe Eric Farias will propel them to some sort of decent result. He has 8 goals and 14 appearances this league campaign. Maybe. I mean, I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to find something for them. Massive video. Almost done those guys. 2 groups to go. In Group G, we have Man City, Wydad Casablanca, Al Ain, and Juventus. Now, Wydad are the most successful side in Moroccan football history, and they won the CAF Champions League in 2022. The last very good season that they've had of late, when they won the league and the Champions League. Since then, they're runners-up in both the Champions League and the league in 2023. That's gotta hurt. And nothing since then. Wydad has always given priority to their attack, as Moroccan journalist Amin El Amri noted that they typically have, the league's best wingers, fullbacks, and strikers, and look to be as direct as possible. But that changed this season with Rulani Mokoena, who coached the Mamelodi Sundowns previously, changed that outlook, which was rough at first, but things are getting better for Wydad. They played FC Porto and Sevilla in pre-tournament friendlies and fell 1-0 in each of those games. They aren't seen as a favorite to advance. Al Ain aren't favorites either. They qualified by winning the AFC Champions League under manager Hernan Crespo back in the 23-24 season, beating Al Nassr and Al Hilal on their way to a 6-3 aggregate win in the final over Yokohama Marinos. Since then, however, the Abu Dhabi club's form has fallen off of a cliff. In the season that followed the Champions League win, Crespo was sacked, the team was out of the Champions League elite in the league stage, lost in the first round of the League Cup, the round of 16, and the President's Cup, and finished 6th in the league, dude. Really not looking good for Al Ain going into this tournament. The top 2 here, I hate to be, Eurocentric, but it's looking very likely that Juve and Man City will cruise through based on how Wydad and Al Ain aren't at their strongest at the moment. Manchester City, they qualified as the 2023 Champions League winners. They've signed Ryan Aït-Nouri leading into this tournament, and they have seen Kevin De Bruyne leave. They're looking to get more signings in, but with the deadline, the day of recording this, it's not looking likely. Boop, 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 boop. This is breaking news coming to you from Adrian. It's breakfast time. We got oats on deck. And I woke up to news that Manchester City confirmed not just Tijani Reinders for the Club World Cup, but also Rayan Cherki. Does that make them stronger contenders for this tournament? Yeah, probably. You could also argue that this will be their first time playing with their new squad, so they will have some figuring out to do. But as we saw from Rayan Cherki, at least, when he came on for France, he was instantly dangerous. He's just a brilliant player. Reinders, also a brilliant player. I think he'll do fine, but his role will be a little bit more, he'll have more figuring out to do in a Guardiola midfield. Cherki, you could say the same, but he has a little bit more license, you'd expect, to roam and play make and stuff like that. So yeah, both of them confirmed and will be available for the Club World Cup. Man City, of course, had a horrible run mid-season where they lost 9 times in 12 matches, and one of those losses was against Juventus, actually, 2-0. That said, Man City have smartened up a bit. Erling Haaland is back in the attack, and most importantly, Rodri. Rodri has returned, and the importance of that cannot be understated, right? City looked lost without him, constantly looking out of shape defensively, and so his return will be massive. Don't know how he will play just yet, but he got a run out at the end of the season against Bournemouth for 7 minutes. But hey, he's back, and so is City's form, closing out the season with 1 loss in 13 matches, that loss being the FA Cup final. And finally, Juve, who had an underwhelming season, didn't they? They qualified as the 8th best eligible team from UEFA. There was so much optimism with Thiago Motta in charge that he would be the guy to lead Juve to a new generation and back to success. But he was sacked. In his place, Igor Tudor came in and he steadied the ship to the point where, after missing out on Antonio Conte, who said no to Juve, who decided to stay at Napoli, they will have Tudor as their manager for the next season as well. A huge boost for Juve. Gleison Bremer, their best defender, is part of their squad for this tournament, and Randall Kolo Muani will stay with Juve for this tournament as well. Juve certainly have a good enough squad to make a deep run in this tournament. It's just been a question of direction for them. But having some time under Tudor, they finished the season with 1 loss in 8 matches. Look out for Kenan Yildiz, by the way, who will have some fun up against Wydad and Al Ain in Juve's first 2 matches. So they'll have 2 matches to sort of get warmed up before taking on City. Group H, here at last, and here we have Real Madrid, Al Hilal, Pachuca, and RB Salzburg, sort of the meme of the tournament in some ways, as so many people have questioned just what they are doing here. So let's start there. You know how UEFA was supposed to take the last 4 winners of the Champions League to the tournament? Well, since Real Madrid won it twice in that time frame, in 22 and 24, then we had to jump to the rankings. And remember, only 2 teams from each country are eligible to go to the tournament, so you had to skip all the way down to the list of eligible teams with plenty of repeat countries in there, and eventually you land on RB Salzburg, an Austrian club who, given how they constantly have been in the Champions League lately after dominating domestically, have a decent ranking, right? But they surely didn't have a strong season, did they? Their period of dominance is over in Austria, as Sturm Graz has wrestled control back from them for 2 seasons in a row, with Salzburg actually finishing in 3rd this season, and were dumped from the Austrian Cup in the quarterfinals. In the Champions League, Salzburg were essentially free points for whoever played them, as they finished in 34th out of 36 teams. Dreadful. Salzburg will fight for 2nd place as they benefit from having a decent squad due to the resources available to them, a Red Bull club, but they'll be in tough against the other sides that aren't even called Real Madrid, right? Let's just get them over with. Real, you already know why they're here, winners of the 24 and 22 Champions League, and I mean, do you really need a Real Madrid preview? Well, they had a disappointing season, but even in that, Kylian Mbappe managed to score over 40 goals. Luka Modric has left the club, Carlo Ancelotti has left the club, Lucas Vazquez has left the club, and Xabi Alonso, Dean Huyson, and Trent Alexander-Arnold have joined. In fact, they had to pay Liverpool $10 million for Alexander-Arnold to join early for this tournament since his contract, ended at the end of June. So does that technically make him not a free transfer anymore? That's right. Alexander-Arnold is now a €10 million transfer, not a free transfer. Real Madrid will be one of the favorites for this tournament despite not playing incredibly well this past season, but given they will be under a new manager, there's room to say, well, maybe they won't do as well as we thought, right? Regardless, they are getting out of this group in 1st place. Knockout rounds, we'll get there later. Okay, CF Pachuca. They qualify as the winners of the Champions League, CONCACAF Champions League that is, last year. However, things haven't gone well since. They finished in the bottom 3 of the Apertura table with just 3 wins in 17 matches, but have improved a bit in the Clausura where they finished 8th, but were eliminated by Club America. So their final table position was 12th, their lowest since 2018. But in tournaments, Pachuca tend to do okay. Just this past Intercontinental Cup, aka what the Club World Cup used to be, they made it all the way to the final by beating Botafogo and Al Ahly, but Real dealt with them easily in the final 3-0. Still, they have a habit of showing up in tournaments like this, international tournaments, right? But can they finish above Salzburg? Yes, they could. Can they finish above Al Hilal? That's another question. Al Hilal qualified by winning the 2021 Champions League, have actually been working tirelessly to sign N'Golo Kante on loan just for this tournament, asking their buddies Al Ittihad for some help. Al Hilal, of course, just prized Simone Inzaghi away from Inter and have perhaps the strongest squad in Saudi Arabia, but they have a lot of injuries at the moment. Marcos Leonardo, Malcolm, João Cancelo, amongst others, right? They've been rebuffed by a few stars this summer as they tried to bring in Osimhen and Gyökeres as well as Theo Hernandez. Apparently they want to go for Jadon Sancho. That's been spoken of. We'll see what happens there, but none of those big names have come through at the time of recording. However, who needs big names when you have Alexander Mitrovic, who's been banging them in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years now, prolific in that league. So the goals front should be okay. The midfield is strong with, Ruben Neves and Milinkovic-Savic. Pretty decent squad. Al Hilal finished second to Al Ittihad this past season, fell in the semi-finals of the AFC Champions League Elite, and will be looking to make second place their own in this group. I reckon they will pull it off, but Pachuca, like I said, there's just something about them, man. There's something about them. Guys, are you even here still? Am I speaking to nobody? This is my longest video ever. I mean, it has to be. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching and leaving your thoughts, and I will see you for another video soon. The predictions video. It will not be as long as this one. I promise you that. All right, guys. Take care.